Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith, and you're watching another episode of Overbooked, the series where I talk about every single book on my shelf, because if I don't, we might wake up and it'll be 2020 all over again. Truly a nightmare. Today we are talking about the Cursebreakers trilogy, or A Curse So Dark and Lonely, A Heart So Fierce and Broken, and A Vow So Bold and Deadly. Let's do the usual figuring out where these go. This is the Fairy Loot edition, the hardback edition of A Curse So Dark and Lonely that I got back when I was subscribed to Fairy Loot many years ago. I believe both of these books were gifted. I know at least one of them was gifted by Amber. I think both of them might be. But if you gifted me the other one and I didn't mention you, I'm so sorry. I'll link Amber below because her channel is great. I'm going to keep this spoiler-free-ish. As with most of my reviews that tend to dip negative, there will be a few more spoilers in this. So I suggest seeking out other avenues of reviews if you want positive, wholesome thoughts about this series. This is not the place for those, but I'll try and keep this free of major spoilers. I will also link the story graph for book 1 below so you can find any content warnings if you are a person who needs to look for those. This is a YA fantasy trilogy, the first of which, published in 2019 to pretty great acclaim. Was it 2019 or 2018? 2019. And then, at least in my perception of it, it sort of slowly dripped off the radar, both for general, I think, reasons to do with perhaps the hype that the books were getting in relation to how good the books were, but also probably pandemic reasons. The third book published in a pandemic. It was a difficult time. I stopped hearing as much about these. I think it's Brigid, but it could be Brigid. I'm not certain. I would say Brigid, like Bridget, but I'm not sure. Kemmerer is the author of this series and is a New York Times bestselling author who has written a fair few things. Her most recent work is Defy the Night, which we're hearing a lot more about. Allow me to read you the blurb of book 1. Prince Ren, the heir to Emberfall, is cursed. Forced to repeat the autumn of his 18th year over and over, he can only be freed if a girl truly falls for him. And after so many failures, his kingdom and its people are barely holding on. Harper's life has never been easy, but she's learned to be tough enough to survive the streets of Washington, D.C. When she is sucked into Ren's world, nothing is as it seems. Powerful forces are standing against Emberfall, and it will take more than a broken curse to save it from utter ruin. So, it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling from sort of the end of the golden age of YA fairy tale retellings. We're still not quite out of it. We're not, but we're getting a lot more different retellings at the moment, which I'm very much appreciating. But this is Beauty and the Beast, but with a girl from the modern world. Books 2 and 3 bring in different characters, new characters. They're not new, they're in this book, but they get character perspectives, and the story changes somewhat, which I will come on to, but I want to give the people who don't want to be spoiled for anything the chance to duck out at this stage. Now, you've heard vaguely what the book is about, and that I'm not super keen on it. But you can read whatever you want, I'm not here to judge you. I'll start with the things I really like about this series. I think Harper, our main character, the girl from DC, is a really strong main character. I like her a lot. I'd not read a book, certainly not a fantasy book with a character with cerebral palsy in it before, with that just written out on the page. And I think the author has done her best to do a honest, genuine, not inspiration word that I cannot say on the internet, portrayal of a character with that, I don't know if you say condition, of a character with that disability. Obviously, I cannot speak to exactly how accurate that is, particularly in the later books. I don't know, I haven't heard anything about it. Aside from that, Harper is a really cool character, and I particularly like her in book 1, just her drive to understand why things are happening the way they are happening and to challenge that and then be challenged in return. I think Harper has some really interesting moments throughout the series, and I think she's a strong character. We do get less of her in book 2, particularly in book 2. Book 3, there's a little bit more. It's a complicated arc across the trilogy, but overall I do think that she is very interesting to read as a character. The other characters are also very interesting. Grey, the last remaining guard of Emberfell, is one of my favourite characters, I think, just for the decisions he has to go through. I would almost have liked to have read the whole trilogy just from Grey's perspective, I think, because I don't know how much the other perspectives add, which is something we'll come on to. But yes, there are good characters in this, and Harper as a modern character brought into a fairy tale world is less annoying than some other instances of that I have read. There is also queer representation in these books, which is always nice, both in, I think, in the Emberfell characters. I can't remember. Primarily, Harper's brother is gay, and that's just there, and that's fine, and I liked that, bringing that into a fairy tale world and that not being a huge deal was just nice. And I think my other thing is that, and this is kind of like a mixed bag of things, this is a bittersweet moment. There are some really interesting ideas explored in this book, particularly in books 2 and 3, because we have the fairy tale in book 1, But what happens after the end of that? What happens after Happily Ever After? I know it's a cliche, we've heard it a number of times before, but genuinely, like, let's look at this. Let's look at the problems that still arise. Is this person who's been under a curse this long of a time actually going to be a good ruler of the place they are now ruler of? Is this character who's come from the modern world going to stay or leave? What are the options? And equally, is a romantic relationship based on that kind of initial meeting and situation worth pursuing? What do you do with it? There are a myriad of other questions that this book poses that are really interesting. However, and here we come into more of my cons for the series. Because the second and third books open up a whole other plot box, the plot box is opened and more plot spews out, there is not enough time to really get into those questions on anything more than kind of a surface level. And while, in theory, these characters are having these thoughts and emotions and feelings and digging out these questions all by themselves, we don't get that as a reader, and I don't think that the book intentionally pushes that in front of you because they're trying to do too many other things. So, for example, I am a modern girl in a fairy tale world. What does that mean for me? Never really gets explored, or, slight spoiler, here we are, 3 people from a drastically different world, now here. What does this mean for us? Do we go back? What are our problems with the lack of technology? What are we doing with disease? It's just never really explored enough, and I think that's something that's lost from book 1 onwards, is it really just goes into, right, we need to do Emberfell, we're not dealing with the real world at all. I also think that in terms of some of those discussions of romantic relationships and communication and forgiveness, don't get me wrong, love a story that implies that you need communication to make a relationship work, but there are some things within this story that are forgiven or washed away in the sense of, oh well, it's a fairy tale world. So obviously in this time period, we would be doing these terrible things and no one would question it, and if you had a reasonably good reason, I guess I can forgive you. And I don't know how I felt about that as a person from the modern world, if that would be something I could forgive. And maybe that's just me, maybe you feel totally differently, but yeah, it just didn't quite sit right with me, and it made the ending of the whole trilogy feel a little bit wah. My last thing is, it really annoyed me that no one in the entire book from the modern world ever picked up that it was Beauty and the Beast. And I don't know if it was meant to be implied that that story did not exist in this version of the modern world, right? It was an alternative modern world, we didn't have Beauty and the Beast, but at no point does anyone go, God, that sounds a bit like Beauty and the Beast, doesn't it? Even as like a throwaway comment. How weird. And I suppose it's because you don't want to open the doors to, I'm just writing all the fairy tale worlds are real and, we're going to go meet Humpty Dumpty next door, because I think that's been done to death. But yeah, it really bothered me that no one brought it up. To the point where I think it ruined my enjoyment of the whole trilogy, that I was like, is anyone going to bring this up at any point? And maybe they did and I missed it, and if they did and I missed it, I retract that statement, but it really annoyed me. So having read all 3 of them back to back over the last few weeks, I can say quite confidently I think book 1 is the best. Book 1 is actually a pretty good time. If you just ignore the last cliffhanger moment, it could be a pretty decent standalone fairy tale retelling. Alright. Book 2, it's very slow. You need to read book 2 to read book 3, but book 3 is much better than book 2. It is what it is in trilogy time sometimes. I think particularly the last section of book 3 I actually didn't hate, other than a few moments. So make of that what you will. I think if you have the first one on your shelf, you could read it and have a good time. If you own the whole trilogy, well, it might be time to unhaul. I think it might be time for me to unhaul. But before that, let me talk about some comparisons, some other things you might like. I've only read the first book in this trilogy, but Akata Witch by Nnedi Okorafor is another. I've been opened up into this world that I did not know existed before series. That first book is really, really solid. I need to do a reread, and I think the third one comes out this year, so I must get on that. For Portal Fantasy, I always recommend the Wayward Children series by Shannon Maguire. They are gloriously queer portal fantasy stories, or stories about children who have been in portal fantasies. Oh, so good. The most recent one is out now, and it's fantastic. Just go and read those. And if you want a book that explores the sort of mental health ramifications of being taken into another world when you are a child and then growing up and then coming back, it's not Narnia, but it is. The Light Between Worlds by Laura Weymouth is absolutely beautiful, heartbreakingly beautiful. Content warnings apply for that one, but it's very good. I am going to unhaul this series, and I know I've done a fair amount of unhauling YA trilogies lately, but I think partly it's having grown out of YA a little bit more and just time to let go of the books that I own. And also, I think just with this one, it wasn't totally for me. So if you're a person who does love this series and you are in search of the Fairy Loot hardback, I do think I have the book plate stuck in as well. If you would like this, let me know. If you're in the UK, drop me a message somewhere. And these, if you'd like these as well, let me know, but I'll probably donate them. So here's to some shelf space in 2021. Have you read these? Do you have plans to? What are your thoughts on YA trilogies and why the second book is so slumpy quite a lot of the time? Let me know down in the comments below. If you haven't already, while you're commenting, you can also subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. Follow me on social media. Come hang out on Discord. If you'd like to support the channel, you can join a wonderful group of patrons over on my Patreon. Thank you so much. You're all wonderful and amazing. Beams of light. Thank you so much for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. There's gonna be some bloopers now. And I think Bridget Kemmerer has done her best. Bridget Kemmerer?